Hi, Richard, Love Brewing. We're going to talk today about our wine starter kits. Now these are designed for when you are using wine kits. Okay, so there is a difference between doing it from fruit and what have you and doing what we do here. These are wine kit starters. So let's run through. We've got three types. We've got the premium, we've got the superior, and we've got the luxury. Let's look at the difference between all of them so that you can then make a decision as to which one you think best suits your needs. The premium starter kit. We have a bucket. It's a 30-litre bucket which is graduated on the side, and we suggest 25 litres being the maximum fill volume for this particular bucket. In the top of the lid we have a grommet which will take the airlock. So the airlock will go into position there onto the bucket lid. I'm hoping that you can see that. How does that look? Yeah? Okay. So the airlock goes in place. The grommet fits in and the airlock on top. We've also got a mixing spoon or a paddle, depending on what we are sending out. They both do the same job, slightly different, but you might get one or the other. Don't panic, they both do the job. We also have included in the starter kit the hydrometer and the thermometer. Now these are must-have pieces of equipment. Don't even think about doing anything without these two pieces of equipment. The hydrometer will measure the gravity of the liquid, the thickness of the liquid, and that is so important when we're making anything, beer, wine or spirit. It is an absolute must. They're not expensive, they're only about £4, but they are so good at giving us a gauge as to when the wine is ready and how we've started it and the amount of alcohol and all the various other things. We do a separate guide on the hydrometer, so again I'm not going to go into too much detail about that. We also have a thermometer, and the thermometer is designed to give us a reading of the liquid temperature. The majority of kits will give us a guideline, normally between 20 and 25, liquid temperature, that's C, that we need before we add the yeast. And this will just help us to confirm that we have the right temperature. It will also be a must for the area we're going to leave it in to ferment, so that we know we've got the right room temperature for doing fermentation. Again, I'm not going into that because that's all covered on your instructions. Second most important thing after the hydrometer and thermometer is the sterilizer, because every single thing that comes into contact with the wine, beer or spirit needs to be immaculately clean, and all our equipment needs to be beautifully sterilized. So we add a tub of sterilizer. This is particularly strong, it's chlorine based, and it will need to be rinsed after it's been used. We would always recommend that you put about 5 litres of water in the bottom of your bucket, preferably warm, large spoonful of sterilizer in, give it a swirl round. Make sure all parts that are touching the fermentation will have been sterilised using the solution that we're going to mix around in the bucket. And all the bits of equipment that come in, again, will need to be sterilised. We also have, at the end of fermentation, you will need to be able to transfer the liquid from the bucket into your bottles. Okay. In the starter pack, you will also have a siphon. The siphon is designed to be able to transfer the clear liquid from the bucket into your bottles. Now, as a preference, we would always recommend that you siphon from one container to another. So if you have another bucket or another container, it is perfect to be able to use that for siphoning the clear liquid. So we would go from this bucket into another bucket. The premium starter kit only has one container, so preferably you need another container of your own. Now if you are very careful, you can actually siphon it into bottles. It's not something I would like to do, but it is possible to do it. And that's why this is the premium one. The siphon comes with a special sediment trap on the end, and this will prevent us drawing up the sediment. We also have an extendable tube, so again we can extend it to fit whichever container that we want to. And the final thing that we have for it is a bucket clip, and the bucket clip will snap on into place like that, and this will then allow us to use the siphon, if I can show you, on the side of the bucket like so, and it will now hold it in place. I can now keep my hands free, and it's really important when we're siphoning to be able to have some movement. The tube will obviously extend down to the bottom of the bucket because we've got the extendable part, and from here you can see on the end we have a tap. This is an on-off tap, so if you are transferring into bottles, you can go one bottle, switch off, into the next bottle, switch on, switch off, and you can use the tap to do that for you. Alternatively, if you're going into another container, just leave the tap on full. And with this particular siphon, we're going to suck to get the movement going, to start it. Suck. And we need to make sure that our second container is below the bottom of this one. So the top of our second container must be below the bottom of this particular container, so that when we're siphoning we are dropping down, because this will be a gravity fed siphon. I'll run through our other ones later and you'll see the difference on them. One other thing that I should have mentioned to you is that with your hydrometer, the case that it comes in can also double up as your trial jar. A lot of people would drop the hydrometer into their liquid and take a reading. Now that's not dead easy to do. If you've got it in a container, it's much easier. So we could fill the container with liquid and we can then drop the hydrometer in, and what we're going to do is we're going to read across the liquid line on the hydrometer. So this case is important for two things: one, to protect your hydrometer, and two, that you can use it if you're needing to take a reading. Now with all the starter kits we also add a DVD, and the DVD is one done by RB, that's me, Richard Blackwell, and the DVD will be broken into three parts. So we have wine, beer and spirit making. Now if you're only interested in wine, that's fine, but it does give you the option to look at the other two topics that we can cover on the DVD. That's your premium starter kit. Now if we're going to move slightly more up market and we want to add another container, so we're going to take a 25 litre plastic fermenter. Now this will double up as our second container. We can also use this for fermenting, but I have to be honest, when I am making anything I always start with my initial fermentation in the bucket. I can then give it a good stir, I can make sure everything's dissolved. I've got the big lid that goes on the top. If we're getting a slightly vicious fermentation, then obviously we're in a position where the extra capacity of the lid area will cope. These ones are perfect for fermenting and they're perfect for transferring. The Superior starter kit has this in it. So this is the difference between the Superior and the Standard. Now with the Superior we also get the big 4-inch lid on the top, which is this one here, again with a bung and with an airlock. So we're getting two airlocks and two sort of bung type situations, one with a grommet and the other with the bung. As I said, both can be used for fermentation. Now we like this one for use with the quicker wines. So any of the wines that you are doing fairly quickly, these are great. This particular container though is not to be used for long-term storage. So again, I'll come on to that as to what is suitable. But this is no good for long-term storage because we're going to get too much headroom. We're trying to avoid any space above the liquid, and that's why we were looking at the other container for our luxury starter kit. Okay, all the other items in the superior starter kit, the hydrometers, the thermometers, the DVD, the mixing spoon, the sterilizer. Oh, by the way, be careful with that sterilizer. The sterilizer, it's chlorine based, so you don't want to get yourself covered with sterilizing solution. If you get it on you, just rinse it off afterwards and make sure it doesn't go anywhere near the face. Okay, all the other things are all constant. Okay, now we then do the other version. The next version up is the luxury starter kit. Now with the luxury starter kit, we're not going to do the 25 litre plastic two-handled fermenter. I'm going to move that to one side, and we are now bringing in the 23 litre clear. 23 litre clear carboy. Now this is designed for the better quality wine kits, so things like Vintners Reserve, World Vineyard and Selection. We would recommend using these. We would do a fermentation initially in the bucket. We would then transfer it using the siphon into this container. Now we're going to be able to get 23 litres in here, so we're not going to end up with any headroom because each of those kits I've mentioned make 23 litres. We've no headroom at the top, and this is why we like this container for the better quality kits. Now on top of that, we've a slightly different bung, same airlock, and we also have a trial jar. So with this particular kit, we're going to use a trial jar as opposed to the actual jar itself that comes with the hydrometer. The trial jar can sit and take the hydrometer. So it's a little bit more substantial. It's got a slightly bigger opening to this, so it does make life a lot easier when we're actually looking at taking a hydrometer reading. We've also got a digital strip, and that we can stick onto our bucket or our fermenter, and we'll be able to take a reading of the liquid. This will highlight the liquid temperature in our bucket. And always remember, so you don't get confused, that your liquid temperature will be 2 or 3 degrees higher than your room temperature during fermentation. The yeast will start to work. It will convert the sugar to alcohol. When it does that, it gives off CO2, but it will increase the temperature in the bucket. So your liquid temperature is always going to be 2 or 3 degrees higher than your room temperature. And obviously you still get the DVD with all the starter kits, as I've mentioned before. On this particular kit, you'll also have a slightly different siphon. This is the luxury starter kit. Don't get confused. This is the luxury starter kit where you're going to get the auto pump siphon. So with the luxury starter, we're going to get the auto pump. Now the auto pump, the easy flow, will work by simply moving it up and down. As we go up and down, the liquid will start to flow through the siphon and out through the end. Now remember, the container we're collecting it in needs to be below the bottom of this bucket. The top of it needs to be below the bottom of this bucket. It is gravity fed. So without the gravity, you won't be able to transfer. Now with the auto siphon that we do, or the easy flow siphon, we have a clip, and the clip just goes onto it like so. And that, again, we adjust to take the right size of our bucket, and that will sit there nicely. So again, my hands are free, which makes life so much easier when I'm coming to do all the transferring. And the final thing that we have with this particular auto siphon is our clip, our flow clip. This is the flow clip, and this will go on the end of the siphon, and this allows us to stop the actual flow when we're halfway through, and we won't then need to start the flow again. So quite a useful little gadget that just goes on the end of the actual siphon. Okay, I think that sort of explains where we are and what's the difference between the 3 different types. We've got the premium starter kit, which is just one single bucket which means you really need another container when you're doing the transfer, or if not, you have to be very careful when doing it. You've also got the Superior starter kit. The Superior starter kit has the 25 litre fermenter, which is this one. The 25 litre fermenter. The Luxury starter kit comes with this particular one, which is designed for using with the more expensive kits. Fermentation and making time is normally between 4 and 8 weeks. If we're doing it for that long, we need to make sure that there's no headroom. And this is why we recommend the 23 litre rather than the 25 litre. We don't want any headroom. Now, for long-term storage, we wouldn't recommend storing in anything but glass. You can get away with storing in the short term in this particular fermenter, provided we haven't got any headroom. But I wouldn't like to keep it in here for more than about 6 to 9 weeks. With the glass containers, you can store for as long as you want. So long-term storage, always think in terms of glass. We do 23 litre glass carboys, we do 5 litre glass carboys, we do standard size wine bottles. So any of those can be used for the storage part of the operation. Okay, the Superior is fantastic for the quick wines, but this is the one that we would recommend for the quality kits that we're going to be using. You've also got the difference between the Superior and the Luxury of you've got the hydrometer trial jar, and you've also got the LED thermometer strip, and you've got the different siphon. So that's where the difference in cost comes in. Now, with all these kits, we would strongly recommend that you add a bottling pack to it as well. So we'll just run through the bottling pack and you'll be able to see. Now remember, this is not included in the price, so think in terms of this one as an extra. The bottling starter pack is something that you might well decide you want to add to your wine starter kit order. With the bottling starter pack, you end up with 4 items. The 4 items you get a corking machine. Now the idea of the corking machine is you slot a cork into the position here, it goes down onto your bottle and you press down, and that will insert the cork into your bottle. We do 2 types of corking machine, so depending on which one we have in stock at the time, depends on which one we send out. So don't be specific as per the one on this particular film. We've also got in the bottling starter pack the corks. So these corks need to be lightly rinsed because they might have a little bit of dust on, but they come with a special silicone seal on them which helps you to put them in to the wine bottles. So don't soak the corks. That's what they used to do in the olden days, not anymore. Very light rinse and then they can be added. We also have the shrink capsules, and the shrink capsules, they will literally just go on top of a bottle and we hold them in place. As you can see, they're quite large. Hold them in place and we can then turn the bottle in the steam of a kettle, or alternatively we can use something like a hairdryer that's going to be quite hot, and that will just help to shrink the shrink down onto the bottle and grip it tight. That's probably why it's called shrink, isn't it? Yeah. We've also got some labels which come with the pack. Just one second. And the labels which come with the pack, if we don't know what you're buying in terms of a wine starter or a wine kit, we will put in some plain ones that you can use, and you can write on what it is that you're actually making. If you order a wine kit with your starter kit, which we would always recommend that you do because none of them will include a wine kit, if you order a wine kit, we will always try and send some labels which marry up with that particular kit. Labels normally between 26 and 30 come in a pack. Well worth adding. The price is so much cheaper if you buy it as the bottling starter pack rather than buying all the individual items separately.